So today I want to talk about imposter syndrome or insecurities or the feeling of not being good enough or not being in our place in different areas of life. I want to talk about how that feels, what kind of reflexes we have in those moments, and how faith can be the key to beating this feeling. If it's your first time here, my name is Gigi. I host this podcast called Hear Me Out, and I talk about faith, critical thinking, current events, overall just everything wisdom. So if that sounds good to you, hit subscribe and let's stick together. Let's get into it. So, why am I talking about this today? The context is that it came up recently for me, actually, in my personal life as well as professional life. I was feeling a little bit down, unmotivated. I was feeling like I was not getting anywhere precisely that I wanted in work and at home. And I was kind of very much aware of the gaps between what I want, where I want to be, and where I am. And of course, that feeling is not fun because you start doubting yourself. You start kind of spiraling into thoughts that are not great. You start being unproductive and kind of not fun to be around for everybody else and yourself. And I just was not recognizing myself. Typically, I would like to say that I'm a positive person. I like laughing. I like cracking jokes. I like thinking about the future in a positive way. And so I don't typically get into this type of funk. And so that lasted until I took a moment, like I consciously took a moment to think, to plan, to meditate on the word, and to have a very fortunate, actually, random conversation with someone at work that truly opened my eyes. And so, fortunately, like I said, I was able to fall back into my default mode, which, again, I'm pretty typically confident that things get better. I'm able to fuel myself, or I guess get fuel from the word, from my family, from my kids, from my husband, from just situations in general, and to relativize, hope that's a word, just put things into perspective. Let's say it like that. So I was just looking back in the last few days, and I realized we all probably go through these types of feelings. And for some people, it's even their whole life where they feel not there. They feel not satisfied or not happy with themselves. They feel out of touch, out of place at work, out of place in the dating world, out of place in parenting and marriage and relationships and all of that, or even out of place with themselves. They just feel like they're not supposed to be that way, or they're not supposed to be there at all. I was reading up some articles about how, I don't know how scientific all of this is, and that's not the plan of the day, but I was reading that the month of November, for some reason, we should probably look into it. The month of November is particularly hard for people in general, and in terms of like sad news and people giving up on life and things like that. November typically, and end of year, is the most the saddest, or like the most, where we see the most cases of those type of things. It could be paired with the fact that when you look back at the year, look back at what you thought you would accomplish, maybe it's not done. It could be that typically end of year means family time for most people who are blessed and fortunate to have people around them. And so when other folks that could be lonely or looking around, they feel more alone in that time. It could be because of the cold. And, if you live in countries like me where it's winter just coming in and less sun. It could be a multitude of things, but I read up that November was just a tough month. And so maybe that's what it was for me, or maybe it's just that I was not spending as much time in the Word and as much time with myself and as much time caring and freeing my mind to be able to just rest my mind. So it got me thinking to why was I feeling that way, but also how great that I was able to quickly kind of bring back the positive vibes, bring back the default mode of being confident. And my brain went straight to how I was raised, which is what I want to talk about now. I would like to say, if I can boast for like 2.5 seconds, that fortunately I rarely struggled with insecurities growing up, or feeling not enough, or feeling out of place. I realized that I had very positive role models in women around me growing up. They were secure, they were feminine, they were smart, they were beautiful inside and out. And also, I see now just how much it was a good thing, but they didn't really compare themselves to other women or even gossip the way that sometimes we can see other girls and young women growing up. And now that I think back, I realized I was raised to give value to other people, to respect other people, but also respect myself and women my age and young kids my age when I was a kid. And these thoughts that I'm having as an adult, or that I was having recently, were aliens to my brain. I never really allowed myself to go there, even growing up. And I remember even feeling uneasy when I was a teenager, and there would be girls around me who would feel that way. I would remember feeling uneasy and not really understanding, like, how can you feel insecure? And so this sounds very condescending. I'm not sure how that sounds. So it can come off as very like you think you're better than everybody. But what I'm trying to say is I realized how fortunate I was to be raised with women and men, of course, but with women who exuded confidence, but also showed respect to everybody else, to themselves, to their bodies, to their language, their speech, to the unique beauty of everyone, and who never taught me to look at myself as a mistake or an error or something ugly. I will forever remember. So, fun fact, story time. I was going to a middle school, before I came to America. This is sounding very like coming to America. So before I came to America / Canada, should I say, I was in a school where girls were not allowed to have hair. And so we were all not bald, but we all had a very, very like short haircut, like pixie cut, like guys would have here in America / North America / Canada, whatever. So I remember getting here. So I take the plane. I don't have hair. I come here, and you would laugh now looking at me because I have so much hair. You would think like, what? But I remember coming here and seeing every girl with hair. And to me, it was beautiful because I knew that girls, had hair, right? They have hair. They have long hair. Because I watched TV and I knew like adults in my community, in my house, they had hair. It's just the young girls and young boys were not allowed to have hair. And for that specific reason, it's like that way you can't get diseases in there. It can't be dirty, but also it builds, you kind of all grow up looking alike. You can't really be jealous of the next person because nobody has hair. I'm not sure if that's the that's what the school was going for. But what I do know is I remember coming here, and because I was used to not having hair, I remember two things. I remember other younger girls looking at me and being like, why don't you have hair? Like, what's that? Why do you not have hair? And I could see in their eyes that they were like, what? Are you even a girl? But the good news is I grew up with people without hair, meaning I knew that I was kind of funny. All right. I'm just going to throw myself that flower. I'm funny. I was smart. I thought it was cute or whatever. So to me, the hair was like an extra. And I realized, had my mother and aunties and women around me not raised me and the other girls to be confident in who we are and how we look with or without hair, that could have been a big insecurity of mine. That could have led to me just feeling excluded or feeling different, feeling insecure. But I remember having the opposite feeling. Thank God. Really just thank God. I remember thinking, I don't need hair because it's fine. Now, mind you, 2 years later, I just started growing hair because this was just the norm here. But I will never, ever remember that feeling of, I don't understand why it's a big deal to you guys because I think I look cute. Listen, what I'm trying to say here is how we talk about ourselves, how we look at ourselves, how we feel adequate or inadequate, how we verbalize those things, how we talk about other people's intellect or physical appearance and our intellect or physical appearance. All of those things kids absorb, kids hear, kids see, kids feel, and they will repeat that to other people, but also they will feel that about themselves. If we do not learn how to process those feelings or how to learn to talk to ourselves differently, we might pass it on. We will pass it on to our sons and our daughters someday. And none of us want that. None of us want our little ones to grow up with those feelings. And so my message today was to, whenever we have those feelings, think about, how did I get here? Why do I think that about myself? Sure, there are things I need to correct or work harder on or whatever it may be, but why do I allow myself to stay in that place in my head? So what I did was this conversation, this very fortunate conversation I had with a colleague, opened my eyes, because the person was like, well, what would you advise your daughter? What would you tell your daughter if they were feeling the same? And the advice came out so easy and so fast and just without any effort that I was like, wait, I'm able to advise her in an imaginary scenario, but I'm not putting in practice my own advice to her. And my advice was things like, well, you're not a mistake. Things like physical appearance matters in terms of like, you have to take care of yourself, but it's not all of you. That's not all of who you are. And of course, the home matters, and your performance, quote unquote, about in motherhood, it matters, and being a wife and being a professional and all of that. But also give yourself room to grow and learn and understand that you have value, not in your own self, but also because you are a child of God. And open your Bible and go remind yourself of who made you, for what purpose, what kind of idea, what was the original plan for you and for everyone else around you, so that you can remember to not waste away your life thinking you're worthless. So that advice that I would have given my daughter, I was like, let me do the same. So I guess I want to share with you a couple of things, if this matters at all. I reread Psalm, and in 139, I remember that it said, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And your works are wonderful, and I know that full well. So to remember that I was created, to remember that, again, I'm not a mistake, and I was knit together, and so were you. And then in terms of strength, in terms of power, I read 2 Corinthians, and on chapter 12, verse 9, it says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. And so again, the fact that his grace is sufficient for me, that his power is made perfect in my weakness, to remember to seek him out, to remember that my weakness is room and space to invite God in my life, to invite God in my home, in my work, in my everything, because it's not me, right? It's not by my might, my power, my strength. It's through his. And the weakness sometimes is a great reminder of, well, what do we need to do here? I also read Isaiah 40 and on verse 31, where it says that people who hope in the Lord will renew their strength, that they will soar on wings like eagles, they will run and they won't grow weary, they will, walk and not be faint. All of that to say really that seeking the Lord, seeking God's truth about us, seeking wisdom, again in the book of Proverbs, for example, about how to grow in maturity, grow in intellect, grow in life in general. There's always room for improvement, but we shouldn't look at ourselves like trash. We shouldn't look at ourselves like insufficient people. We shouldn't look at ourselves like mistakes. That really helped me reset and come back to myself. And instead of those gaps being, jail sentences for me in my head, they were now fuel. Here's what I want to do. Here's where I want to be. Let me figuratively roll up my sleeves and get to work in a good mood, in joy, in peace, but also because I remembered who I was. And so can you. If it's your first time hearing all of this, the Bible, Psalms, Corinthians, Isaiah, all of that, and you're not a Christian, my hope and prayer for you is that you give it a shot and that you find out exactly what all of this means, what faith is. Find out what God's promise is for believers, for people who surrender their life to him. Find the joy and the peace that comes with the faith and the encouragement that comes with knowing that we're not alone. And I encourage you to open up a Bible, to just give it a shot, like I said, because once you find the truth, it can set you free. So the reminders for today, I guess, are that we're not mistakes. We're not botched projects. We were created with intent, and our Creator knows our condition, and he also offers ways to get closer to him and a promise for later. We are not to compare ourselves to others. We are unique, and so are they. We're all necessary. The Bible often talks about how everybody has their own talents and everybody has their own strength, and we're like parts of a body that work together, the body of Christ, and we all need each other. And also that we should not rely on our own strength and power, like I said, but God, on his principles and prescriptions for our life and promises for us. And of course, to take time, right? Like I did, right? Take time to get unlost. Again, that's probably not a word, but to take the time to get unlost, because no one will take it for you if you don't take it. Whenever we're feeling down, whenever we're feeling not enough, whenever we're feeling far from everything and from ourselves, to invest that time into finding back the original thought, or finding the joy, finding the peace, finding the confidence. Invest that time in us, because nobody will do it for us. And for people who have kids or thinking about having kids in the future, if you invest that time, take that time to get yourself together, you're also doing it for them. Because then they're growing up with a parent that is not always in negative self-talk. I have known for years now that people who talk bad about other people feel bad about themselves. That's something I have taught my kids. I've always said, if you see somebody being mean for no reason at all, know that their heart is unwell. But also, if you feel the need to be mean to other people, to your siblings, for no reason at all, check your heart, because there might be something there. So let's not be the people who talk bad about ourselves in front of our kids, or talk bad about other people in front of our kids. Let's eliminate that. And again, there is plenty of wisdom in the Bible. There's plenty of answers in prayer and meditation about the word when you take time to talk to God. So that's that. I wanted to share this thought with you. I hope it was of interest. I hope it encouraged you the way my colleague encouraged me. I hope it was food for thought. And let me know what are your biggest insecurities right now? What fears do you have currently? You can drop those in the chat. That's it for me. I will see you next time.